Greetings, good afternoon. This is Sandra Hess, founder of DTC Wine Workshops consulting agency out of the San Francisco Bay Area. I have the pleasure of recording episode number 10 in the DTC Wine Case Study series to get to the true ROI of why a wine brand like Cornerstone Cellars would outsource telesales to VinoPro Telesales Services. I have the pleasure today of introducing our audience, both Sonyia Grabski, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Cornerstone Cellars, as well as Donnie Varner, the Senior Vice President of Sales now at VinoPro. If we could go ahead and get started with introductions, I'm going to open it up now to Donnie.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Donnie. I've been working with VinoPro for 8 years. And what we do is we do direct-to-consumer sales, and we'd actually do wine club signups as well. Building and maintaining relationships over the phone is what we've been doing for over 10 years. And we've actually made the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing companies in the United States. And we just haven't stopped. We're actually in the midst of opening our fourth office located in Arizona. We've also expanded into doing inbound customer service where we answer calls and emails for wineries in regards to reservations, redirected shipments, giving directions, lots of calls for directions. And any other questions that a customer might have. So when you see a phone number on a website, it can go to us as well. So those are a couple of the things that we do here.
Hello, I'm Sonyia Grabski, and I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing at Cornerstone, and I've been here for about 2 years. We are unique as we've been in a little bit of a turnaround situation. We are small, 5,000 to 10,000, depending on kind of the year for production, so we're what we consider a boutique winery, primarily direct to consumer, so we do not have much of a three-tier distribution. We are really focused on sales in the direct channel. This last year has been a little bit challenging for us because we've actually been a full year without a tasting room. We made a decision to leave a tasting room because of construction. It wasn't really the best place for us to be. And we've got 2 new tasting rooms opening up in the next 6 weeks. We're very excited to be able to kind of turn that pipeline back on and start getting new customers back in the door.
Well, congratulations. A very exciting opportunity for Cornerstone. I remember visiting you all down in downtown Yountville, so excited to check out your new visitor spaces. Well, let's set the stage here. You know, what's happening with direct-to-consumer wine sales across the nation? It's a very exciting time as we continue to watch the fastest growing sales channel in the wine industry continue to evolve. And we tend to see about 9 to 15% of the total DTC pie coming from the telesales and website side. Some of our clients, when we dig into their data sets, depending on the region and maturity of the brand, we see upwards of even 20% now coming through telesales and web. So it's an exciting opportunity for us today to talk about the why behind this increase in sales. So one, we see many brands, you know, not just the big guys, but big and small, focused on building true 360-degree customer views. So we know now that omni-channel marketing is everything. We see CMOs with more marketing budget than CTOs across the US today. Consumer engagement, customer journey mapping, really important priorities for any type of retail style business. And that is, what is the true ROI of a wine brand of any size using telesales to, first of all, grow direct-to-consumer sales and then also retain brand loyalists? And so I'm really excited to talk to 2 experts here in today's DTC wine case study. Let's start off with the why behind Cornerstone Cellars selecting VinoPro. I'm going to open it up to you, Sonyia, with that first question.
So when I first came to Cornerstone actually as a consultant about 2 years ago, they didn't have that channel. So naturally for me, I knew that I needed to open up the telesales marketing channel. It's an incredible channel. I've been working it for 10 years, so I'm very much an early adopter to this channel. And I've done it from the largest companies. I implemented it at Constellation all the way down to very small little brands, 3,000 cases, even smaller than Cornerstone. So for me, it was a no-brainer. I could literally make a phone call, call VinoPro. Like I said, I've worked with them, Constellation, Terlato over the last 10 years. And so they're my first go-to, saying, hey, I've got a small little brand, will you take me on? And it's just an instant way to get cash flow into the business and also build relationships with the customer.
Wonderful. So 10 years working within telesales and in the wine industry. So you've got some great stories to share. I can't wait to hear more. And
yeah, we work from brands, of all shapes and sizes. We have found that generally wineries with 1,000 club members or more is really sort of the target for us as far as what is the most successful with a phone channel. But you can be a little bit smaller, or you can be a large multi-branded winery and do well. But if you're not making phone calls, you're definitely missing out.
When it comes to the how VinoPro team there helps wineries like Cornerstone Cellars grow the direct-to-consumer sales division and retain those loyal customers. Can you explain to us what your team looks like at VinoPro and then some of the solution services you provide?
Yeah, so we do mostly outbound calling, but we also have services like inbound, like I mentioned before. We also do wine club signups. And in Cornerstone's case, they were actually transitioning from one tasting room to another and didn't have a tasting room at all. So we were able to basically make those sales for Cornerstone when they couldn't make sales in the tasting room. But for other partners, it's just as well. I mean, all the sales that we make are incremental. So every sale that we are making is not a sale that happened in the tasting room or online. It's all 100% incremental, including the wine club signups. So we have signed up thousands of wine clubs a year for different winery partners, and we're able to grow their wine club as well as phone sales.
Mm-hmm. So Sonyia, what are some, I guess, keys to success? Let's say a wine brand that is just at the beginning stages of evaluating VinoPro or outbound telesales group. What are some keys to success in ensuring the VinoPro team really is that direct extension of the tasting room or club team?
I think this is a great question, and it's something I've had a lot of learning about, and I think that I've basically put the formula in place with these guys that are used across the way as far as best practices. I think I try to pride myself in being one of their better clients. Number one is, making sure that we can invite their team or we go see their team. We pour through the wines. We get them all the information that they need, that they've got a contact person that gets back to them on a timely method. But then there's the other side as well. There's how do we communicate this to our team? And a lot of times people feel like it's a channel conflict, or like, oh, they're not going to come to the tasting room, or they're buying and they're starting to pick up in the tasting room. They're taking my sales. They're not. And so it's being able to have a conversation. And once again, is that, it's one big pot that we're filling up, the company's goals. And our job is to, figure out all the levers in order to sell wine. The other thing is making sure that they know who's working on the account, because there's nothing worse than when someone comes into the tasting room and says, oh, I was talking to Donnie the other day, and he said that you've got a great new such and such, and, I thought I'd pop by and try it. And there's crickets. They're like, there's no Donnie that works here. Must have been some other winery. That's not what you want to have happen. And so all your frontline staff needs to have an understanding of how to talk about the person that is making the phone calls. And no, Donnie's not here on site, but he works off site doing, marketing. We just don't have that space here. So you have to figure out how to do that. The other thing is I'm a data collection queen. And so for me, every touch point that we can get customer data it's huge. We need to be asking for that data for every single customer coming through. We need to be attaching that data to sales records so that there's actually the information when they're sucking the information out of our system over at VinoPro that they've got when they had their last sales. They know they can legally make the phone call. They can see if they're a club member. They can see the type of wines that they like to purchase. And, that we're capturing not just emails, but phone numbers. One of the huge successes that it used to always make me laugh at another winery coming in is I would have people give us their phone numbers because they were with someone else that purchased. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, I'd start getting orders, $0, but the person was in my system. And then they're getting the first order from the customer, which is a huge thing. I mean, they just turned someone from a prospect into a first-time buyer. And that's not happening in our tasting room.
Mm-hmm. I love that story. Re-engagement strategies are everything. And, I think about direct-to-consumer sales success and the brands that are really nailing it, and they focus heavily on that re-engagement strategy. It's not that first sale that's the most important. It's the second and beyond, and how you're capturing that data, like you mentioned, Sonyia. Glad to hear you've implemented best practices. And what I'm hearing as your words of wisdom is that training needs to happen both at the winery side. So somebody at the winery side needs to own the process and then teach the frontline staff on the proper messaging around this extension, this telesales extension of your sales team. And then two, there needs to be a training from the wine brand to VinoPro on things like, you know, the wine presentation, running through the latest tasting notes, and making sure that the VinoPro team is a true extension based on that same brand voice. So this question goes back over to you, Donnie. What does the ramp up process typically look like when you onboard a new client?
Sure, yeah. I mean, the training is huge from the winery. It's massive. I mean, they need to know the wine, they need to know the story, and you know, we joke that these guys need to know what the dog's name is, you know, because we represent the winery. So when we call as the winery, the caller ID shows the winery. So we want to know every single story about every product that's possible. The actual onboarding, besides the training part and tasting through the wines, we actually have integrations with Vin65. eWinery, and external, even AMS. So our onboarding is pretty simple. It's basically a username and password, and that's it. We get to get full access to what the customers have purchased before, even so much that we can see tracking numbers from previous shipments and help with a lot of customer service issues as well right there on the phone. But the most important piece is when somebody says, I had a bottle of Cabernet from 5 years ago, and we'll say, well, hold on a sec, let's look that up and figure out what wine it was. So a lot of the times the way we can log into the system and see what they've purchased is huge for sales and customer service.
Sonyia, back over to you with this question. So how do you stay in clear contact, regular contact with the VinoPro team?
So I try to make sure that they know the emails that are going out, the special offers that are going out. We're sending them what's going out in club shipments ahead of time. We're giving them our release schedule. If something changes, I'm calling and having that conversation with them. And VinoPro too is also very proactive in reaching out to you every month and saying, what's going on? What are the changes? What do your next 2 club shipments look like? So they're very proactive in communicating back to us as well.
Along that same line, do you give them any directive on the types of notes, CRM information you want added to member profiles?
So they don't typically put information back into the system, but they send notes over with every single order, and then we can add that information back into our system. And they're very good about giving notes, checking credit cards, adding date of birth. If they see something's missing in the client profile, they're going to try to get it for me, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, it sounds like the communication process between the two companies is pretty spot on. Obviously, VinoPro being some of the best in the industry, they've got this pretty well dialed in. Let's get first of all, and Sonyia, know you being 10 years into the wine industry, really bringing in telesales divisions to groups like Constellation and on. Can you give us, you know, your insights as to ROI that you tend to expect from using a group like VinoPro?
So I tend to expect a pretty heavy channel turned on. I mean, it's huge. You know, Constellation, just one brand alone was $1 million the first year. That's $1 million we weren't selling before, which I think is pretty phenomenal. And so for me, it's what is the average order value, and seeing that, you know, we are doing higher than what we normally do in the tasting rooms because they've got more information and they've got more time to talk to the customer, that they're doing 6 bottles, 12 bottles or more is really important to me as well. And then also, you know, are we seeing longer retention for club members? Are we seeing them data capturing credit card declines? So they're my favorite to go to for handing credit card declines. If I hand someone in my office a credit card decline list, they roll their eyes and go, you really want me to do this? And it feels like I'm sending them off on a punishment. And because they're not wired to do that. But the guys at VinoPro, those guys are wired to be on the phone all day. And they're excited to make that phone call because not only are they going to capture that credit card, they're actually probably going to be like, oh, by the way, you missed your last 2 club shipments. Should we just go ahead and get those out to you on top of this month's? And so then I'm not just getting 4 bottles out the door, I'm getting, 6 to 12 bottles out the door.
So Donnie, back over to you with the same question. When we look at, these key metrics from the tasting room, things like average order values, number of case sales, number of conversions to wine club, what are some of the key metrics that you provide your clients on the VinoPro platform?
Sure. Well, let me just give you some of the, the sort of 30,000-foot view. If you are calling, making any calls whatsoever, you're getting 100% return on your investment, because those are all incremental sales. When you sell a case of wine over the phone, that's a case that you wouldn't have sold otherwise. Okay. So I sort of believe in the good, better, best philosophy. Okay. Good, meaning you should be making calls at some level in your winery, even if it's a slow Monday or Tuesday, to have somebody at your winery making phone calls. The better option is to have a dedicated person or team making phone calls. And then the best, of course, is hiring a third-party company like me that can do it compliantly, legally, that has much better success with staffing, training, technology. I mean, staffing right now, just to make phone calls, is a challenge for most wineries, even for tasting room positions, let alone hiring someone that will make, as Sonyia said, hundreds of calls a day. We average about 150 to 200 phone calls a day. And that's going to be your best option for the long term, is hiring someone else to do it. Just to give you kind of some feedback on average order values, we have found that our average order value is consistently about 2 to 3 times what they are for other direct-to-consumer channels like tasting room and e-commerce. Our average order value across all brands in our company is about $450. So, if you compare it to a typical tasting room sale, it's probably $100, $150, $200, something like that. So you're going to make much bigger sales. Most people want to walk away with a tasting room with a bottle or 2 in their hands, or as we're selling 6 packs at the absolute minimum, cases, couple cases. How about a case of Cabernet, case of Chardonnay? So it's multiple cases at a time.
Thank you, Donnie. Those are impressive numbers. $450 average order value for VinoPro wine brands. Yeah, that's really something to be said there. 150, 200 calls per day per brand that you're making on their behalf. So, I mean, dedicated, focused telesales experts on the phones doing the right thing. And then something very impressive that you mentioned also is that, typically 2 to 3 times greater average order value than what we're seeing in the tasting room and club. And that goes back, I believe, to what Sonyia said earlier about the re-engagement opportunity. You've got, brand loyalists already had the in-person experience, already excited about the brand, getting that call from the brand, and now re-engaging. Sonyia also mentioned that they're seeing an increase in club member signups thanks to VinoPro Telesales. Do you want to touch on that as well?
Yeah, so we actually do thousands of wine club signups every year for our partners. And although we don't talk about any specific clients, I can tell you that is thousands of wine club signups that they would not have had otherwise. And I think the reason people are so surprised that we're able to sign up wine club members over the phone and without pouring any wine. There's nobody in front of us. There's nobody that we're not doing tastings or anything like that, clearly. But we're talking about the benefits of joining the wine club over the phone. And I think it's about building a personal relationship with those guys over the phone as well, rather than sending out, promotional emails twice a month with, X percentage off. We're having personal one-on-one conversations where we're actually saying, hey, Jim, how's your summer? What kind of wines are you enjoying? How's your son's graduation? I mean, it's getting that to that level where we're building relationships over the phone. And I think that's why we can sell so much more wine, is because we're building those and maintaining those relationships over the phone that were started in the tasting room.
Include the DTC case study number 10 here on the true ROI of a wine brand like Cornerstone Cellars using VinoPro Telesales Services. Above and beyond the financial ROI, what about customer service, customer retention? How is the VinoPro team assisting you with this big time of transition into two new tasting rooms?
So they've been very good at messaging the timelines of the new tasting rooms opening up. So when they're talking to customers, they're getting them excited. They are actually booking tastings for me going into the fall now. So starting in August through the end of the year, I've been getting tastings. So that's great. They're already getting people seated in seats, and I don't have to do anything, which is fantastic. I also think something else that we haven't touched on in this is the legality. And one of the reasons why I prefer to outsource is that there are a lot of laws around telemarketing, and there are a lot of complex systems. And I know that I do not have the bandwidth to figure that out. VinoPro has a massive technology team that does this, and they understand all the laws, the rules, the regulations, the DNC call list. I think it's really important that you have somebody a partner that actually knows all these laws and can make sure that they're protecting you.
As we conclude our case study today, I would love to wrap up with any final words of wisdom each of you have for any wine round looking to outsource telesales. And let's start with Sonyia.
It's an important channel. I think do your homework, understand what your list looks like, make sure that you've got all your numbers, all your how many club members you have, how many people you have in the system, be able to have a file that you can hand over to the team immediately so that they can sit there and say, you know, we think we can do this. Be patient with the process. The first 3 months, VinoPro's learning my brand, and they're learning how my customers react to things. And so they're going to kind of figure out what levers they have to pull in order to be the most successful they can. What works for one winery doesn't necessarily work for every winery. And then after 3 months, you know, sit down and say, okay, what tools can I give you to make sure that your team has what they need to sell? And then what do you need back from us?
Wisdom, Sonyia. Thanks again for taking time out of your busy day, getting ready to open those 2 tasting rooms to share with our audience all that you've brought to the wine industry when it comes to telesales. So back over to you, Donnie, as we wrap up case study number 10 here. Words of wisdom that you have for our audience.
Yeah, I think making calls at any level is going to be your best option. And people don't always buy over email, right? Or going into the tasting room. A lot of customers will prefer buying over the phone, especially older customers. They like the personal touch. They like the getting phone calls. Our DNC rate is 0.5%, meaning that 1 out of every 200 people will say, take me off the list, etc. And in any other industry where the telesales business, it's like 20 to 30% on the DNC rate. So people like getting calls from wineries. And whether or not you're using me or you're using a different service or you're calling yourself, I highly recommend making phone calls. Building those relationships are going to help keep your customers engaged, and you're actually going to extend the lifetime membership of that member. They're going to be in the club longer because they're getting personal attention because you actually care about their drinking habits. And the more you call, the more often you call, the more they're going to be engaged and the more money they're going to spend with your brand.
Wonderful words of wisdom, and I can't thank you enough for both of you for what you do for the wine industry. This is a very important aspect of how we continue to build customer engagement strategies, how we continue to foster relationships with our brand loyalists, and we couldn't do it without each of you. For those of you watching today's case study, you will find the DTC Wine Case Study Series at dtcwineworkshops.com. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Cheers.